3, ignition. We have liftoff.
That's right. It is the launch of the biggest IPO in history. SpaceX is minting thousands of millionaires and one notable trillionaire. Investors have lined up for the ride, but is now the time to buy a ticket. Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Brian Bremberg, along with my co-host Taylor Riggs, Dave McDowell, Lou Bastanese, and with us for both hours, Fox Business contributor and host of The Fixer, Marcus Lemonis. You ready to go, sir?
I'm ready. I'm excited.
Let's do this. Investors licking their chops as SpaceX kicks off a series of high-profile IPOs in the coming months. SpaceX already raising a record $75 billion, valuing the company at $1.77 trillion IPO price. It's north of $2 trillion now, I do believe. The Wall Street Journal called it a vindication for young Elon Musk. He rang the NASDAQ opening bell from his Texas starbase just hours ago.
I always think about this. There are always problems on Earth. There are always things that we wish to be better, that we want to solve here on Earth, and we should solve them. But there also have to be things that get you excited about the future, that make you glad to wake up in the morning, because you can't wait to see what happens next. And that's the future that SpaceX wants to bring to you.
Okay, Elon has brought the excitement. Will the company bring the financial payoff? Marcus, I start with you.
American capitalism is alive and well, and for us to see what has for many years been people's perspective that America can't do something like this, it's amazing. But it's really four companies. It's a launch business, a Starlink business, a national security business, and AI infrastructure businesses. Yeah. And so it all in one. I would encourage everybody to own at least one share so they can be a part of history, including you.
Okay, so let me ask you, do you like that bundle? We've had different names for that bundle of companies on this show. I'm curious what you think of the bundle.
Well, it's really a communications and infrastructure company. Okay. And the rockets really, maybe at the end of the day, will be the least interesting thing and the only way to get some of that information there. Okay. I'm fascinated by it.
Taylor's been popping into my office like every 5 minutes telling me to get excited about this show. I am excited about this show, Taylor, and I know you are. Tell me what you see here.
Did that opening soundbite that you played just not give you the chills? I get the chills, like listening to Elon Musk talk about how there's so much to be excited about in the future, that there are problems on Earth, but when we think about the moon and the space, and yes, I know that getting chills doesn't mean that the company's worth 160. I don't know. Everyone do their own due diligence and figure out what your own company is worth in your own mind. But that alone, I think, is the excitement. And the fact that 20% of the shares went to retail investors, Brian, shows that this is a retail investor that, too, I think is so excited about the future. I admit, I don't know the financials well enough. It's a hodgepodge of companies. I'm going to friendly poke my friend on the left.
What?
She'll call it a garbage can. I'll call it a hodgepodge.
I'm with you.
That's why I asked you about the bundle of companies.
I'll be Oscar in your garbage can. Let's go.
And Oscar's my favorite character on Sesame Street.
No kidding.
I've eaten out of a garbage can. So
here's what I love about it. There are reports that cafeteria workers who took shares instead of a salary are millionaires. A friend of mine joined this company in 2012. Who knows what he's worth? The point is that you have been rewarded if you stick with the company, if you believe in something. This guy almost lost it all. He almost went bankrupt in 2006, and in 2008, employee number one was reminiscing about it yesterday, talking about 2008, that this was their last chance. And then the whole thing was going to go kabust. And they did it. Why? Because Elon Musk said, I can do it if you get out of NASDAQ, like if you get out of the big bureaucracy. Brian, I'll end here. Employee number one yesterday with Liz Clayman said, I've come from a big space corporation, getting away from the bureaucracy, being able to move fast, be energized, do the type of product development that we want to do. optimizing the rocket for cost. It's refreshing and fun. It's hard, but it's satisfying. And so for me, again, just today, capitalism wins because you have guys that come in, blood, sweat, and tears, and they do it, and they turn this thing around. And if you want to be a millionaire, billionaire, trillionaire along the way, great, good for you, because that's what hard work's about.
Dagan, your garbage can has been invoked. Would you like to elaborate on that today?
Let Lou go first. He can elucidate the valuation
Putting the pressure on me.
Because I am not going to shoot this rocket out of the sky. I actually am going to take aim at the Los Angeles Times and the media minions carrying water for the likes of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. It is egregious and vomitous. So, Lou, you go.
On that,
all right, on that note, egregious and vomitous is not what I'd think of the SpaceX IPO. I'm not going to take this out of air either. It's a win for America. It's a win for capitalism. It's a win for all the early employees. The question for me is, will it be a winner for you if you're buying today? And I think on a valuation basis, it can't hurt to own a share or two right now, but I'm going to look to take a meaningful position on an inevitable dip in this stock price. This history is most important. Every major IPO, you name it, the most compelling ones, the ones that gave you chills before this, because there's probably other ones out there, all came back
Amazon.
by 40 to 50%. Even Alphabet, Amazon, you name
Can I
it.
ask you a question?
Yeah.
Amazon goes public, and we don't know what that company is, and it looks vastly different today than it did then. They couldn't turn a profit back then. But over time, they figured it out. And then, I don't know if you buy on IPO day or 6 months later, but the point is 10, 20 years later, it's higher than it is today.
Correct.
Is that not the bet people are making on SpaceX? Okay, well, I have no idea how to value it. It loses money. I said that about Amazon, and look at that company.
100% agree with you. Here's the only counter argument to that. It's coming to market at a $2 trillion valuation. Could it get to 10 trillion? Yes, that's 50% market penetration. Could it get to 20 trillion? Basically 100% of the total addressable market.
Could it go to 1 trillion?
Could it go to 1 trillion? Here's my thing. In the market, there are plenty of opportunities that could be a 5x or a 10x more so than SpaceX. So if you miss SpaceX or you don't time it perfectly, you can still make money in it, and there's still going to be other opportunities. That's my admonition and caution to people is don't buy into the IPO FOMO. Like, you're never going to get another chance at these great companies.
That's fair.
The retail allocation changes that a little bit because those folks are going to invest and stay, hopefully.
Agreed.
Don't you think those diehards in Elon, I mean, you even had long-term guys who were one of the first investors coming out today and saying, we are not selling. We don't view this as a liquidity event. And so I think some of the previous IPOs were kind of felt like a pump and a dump scheme, or maybe retail investors weren't as committed to the personality or to the mission. And again, I don't want to say this time is different, but this feels different when you've long-term and retail investors saying, we're not selling.
Yeah, and you're going to get great research coverage out of every bank except Jefferies, which is the only one that was left off the cover.
Yeah.
So they're going to facilitate you shorting this, but you're going to get good research fleshing out how big of a market this could get. I want Elon to succeed. I want America to succeed. I'm not betting against Elon. I've done it once before. I won money. I don't think I could do it again. So I will be a shareholder, just not today.
Brian,
Maybe
I don't
one
want
share.
to dominate, but I'll say CFRA comes out with the sell 115 price target. Morningstar $63 price target. New Street Research 165. Oppenheimer 190. So I think to your point, the good news is the Street's coming out and you have a whole range, and everyone can sort of dissect the numbers and pick for themselves.
Writing those reports from their basement, just to be clear.
Well, look at this is good. I cannot wait to follow where the stock goes and the ups and the downs with you guys. I love there's a lot of energy here. I mean, it is. I'm coming right to you on the politics of this one. There's a lot of hope in this stock. You look at, like, what's the addressable market and how much of that is AI and how much of that is rockets, and the split there is real heavy on AI for a company where we showed a rocket launch to start the IPO discussion here. So doesn't mean you can't get there, but what does this trade at? 92 times sales?
It's above that now at a 160.
And the NASDAQ trades at 5 to 6 times sales?
Yeah.
So there's You got to grow into those shoes, and I'm not saying Elon can't.
And Tesla is only worth not even $1.5 trillion. So this company is already worth more than
Tesla's going to get merged into this. That's my prediction.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree.
Now there's
making it a little kind of reducing the odor coming out of the trash can.
Now we can debate this. You do dig into, I think, the point you want to get to. There is a political dimension. There are some folks here who are not questioning whether we're valuing the company correctly or whether they can realize that addressable market. They've got a more fundamental problem with what this company is doing in the context of capitalism. I would say go for it.
This is not just about the politics. It is about the media minions and the liberal lemmings carrying the message of anti-capitalist politicians who are in the Senate, like Elizabeth Warren, or even in the House of Representatives. I have never owned in my professional career an individual stock. I have always owned mutual funds because there was never going to be any conflict of interest. And I was a personal finance reporter and columnist for many years. So something like this chaps my ass, because I got a phone call about this morning from just a regular investor, someone I know, who asked about it, who was actually frightened by it. This is the headline in the Los Angeles Times. SpaceX IPO could really mess up your 401k. That is the headline. What is the article about? Well, first, the writer has a beef with Fidelity for lowering the threshold that retail investors could get into the IPO. Usually it's $100,000 in assets. They lowered the threshold to $2,000 because there was a greater allocation of stock. 30% of SpaceX shares were offered to retail versus it's traditionally 10%. Okay, but that's an individual decision. But this is where this writer is carrying water for Elizabeth Warren. Here's Warren's statement that she put out, and this is what she's been humping so desperately in recent days, that the SpaceX IPO creates a new concern that major stock market indexes are being rigged in a way that will force millions of investors in passive index funds to invest in SpaceX and face exposure to SpaceX significant risk with no choice in the matter. This article, large part of it, is exactly that message. And it is so off base, you're not even in the ballpark. You're not even in the parking lot of the stadium. You're somewhere at a hot dog stand on the shore. You're so out of the park. Here's the issue. Yes, the predominant index is the S&P 500 that shows up in 401k plans. Maybe SpaceX, given its current valuation at $2 trillion, will wind up being in the S&P 500 and in those index funds. But you have to be public for a year, which the article mentions that, that S&P didn't change its requirements. Right. A company has to be public for a year, and I believe it has to have 4 quarters of profitability. Yeah. That's right. So, and even in an index fund, and this just completely illustrates that they don't understand a damn thing about the way index funds work. You know, S&P 500, that's 500 stocks. You get, even in like if you look in the NASDAQ 100, the top holding in the NASDAQ 100 is NVIDIA because it has a $5 trillion market cap. Of those 100 stocks thereabouts, it's only a 13% allocation. It's called being diversified. If it winds up in the Wilshire 5000, the biggest stock in the Wilshire 5000 is only about 6.5% of the total index. There is no risk if SpaceX winds up in any of these index funds. There is no risk to your 401k plan. Do not let these liars peddle fear and peddle fright You should not be afraid of greatness, capitalist greatness. You should not be afraid of the American dream being realized this day. And you should cancel your subscription to this rag.
You know, I think the good news on that is I don't know if a lot of people actually read the LA Times. You know what I mean? I know somebody.
That's not the point. To Dagan's point,
these articles get fed through Apple, the Apple News app, and they wind up on people's phones, and they see the headline and go, "Wait a minute, is my 401k at risk?" Maybe they didn't read the article, but I did. God forbid.
I think maybe the good news, Taylor, since you were popping in my office every 5 minutes, pumping me up, is there is an inherent excitement and sense of adventure about what happens in capitalism. And you have people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, and they're naysayers, and they're negative. And there's some parts of our culture that gravitate to that. But I think there's like the human heart actually gravitates to creativity and possibility. And to me, that's what's going to capture the soul of America with this. I'm teeing you up, Taylor. What do you think?
Well, now I'm afraid I've been too optimistic because I don't want to like pumping it up. But Brian, I totally agree, which is why, of course, I get worried about socialism, communism in this country, but I also don't, because it goes against everything that America was made of. Like inside the fabric of my bones is like a diehard capitalist, and I feel like almost every American, I hope, believes that. Not to think that we shouldn't caution against it, but I think days like today sort of reaffirm that American exceptionalism that we've always sought out for that new frontier, and that's what this is only possible in this country. Again, does it fall below the IPO price?
Who knows?
Maybe.
But this isn't about SpaceX right now. Today, this is about the idea that somebody could create a business in a private market and that the entire market can enjoy the production of it all. And what the possibility. And I think what Dagan is saying is so spot on, because you have people that just want to dismantle the idea that the cafeteria worker can make $1 million by sacrificing cash over possibility.
That's a great point.
That they can wake up every day and somebody could buy their first home because they were the janitor at the building. The idea of having an opportunity to be a capitalist in this country is what this country was built on. And ripping that down isn't about SpaceX and whether it's at 135 or 225, whatever it may be. And I think Dagan nailed it quite clearly.
Now, I have an issue with members of the media carrying buckets from the sewage lagoon for the wannabe communists in power.
To scare people.
So you should enjoy your freedom of the press, indeed, and enjoy the Bill of Rights, but it doesn't make sense that you are humping messages peddled by the very people who want to dismantle those rights.
And it's your right, if you want to or not, to enjoy this rocket ride because it has started. All right, coming up, deal or no deal. Is it actually happening? President Trump says it is. We have the latest on Iran next.